I'm your host, Sean Mitchell, and joining me today is Eric Fitz. Eric is the director of the garden team and capital projects at Bethlehem Farm in Alderson, West Virginia. He grew up in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, and earned rank of Eagle Scout in 1992. Eric was introduced to the work and lifestyle of Bethlehem Farm through the Encounter and Search retreats and a service immersion trip with Loyola University Chicago to Nazareth Farm in 1997, followed by involvement with soup kitchen work in Chicago, as well as service immersion trips to Guatemala in 1998 through 1999. Eric graduated with the Bachelor of Science in Biology from Loyola in 1999. He has experience with nonprofit home repair, service retreat work, farming, and community living since 1999. After college, Eric volunteered and worked at Nazareth Farm in Doddridge County, West Virginia from 1999 to 2002, and worked as the mentor of the Mother Jones House Christian Service Community at Wheeling Jesuit University from 2003 to 2005, where he also studied theology. Eric co-founded Bethlehem Farm with a small group of people, including his now wife, in 2004 to 2005. He married his lovely wife, Colleen, in 2005, and they both attended West Virginia University, where he earned a Master of Public Administration and Certificate in Nonprofit Management in 2007. Eric has served as a caretaker and director at Bethlehem Farm from 2007 to the present. He is father to 3 beautiful children, active as Cub Master of the local Cub Scout pack, and currently serves on the board of Nazareth Farm, Bethlehem's sister farm, and Sprouting Farms, a nonprofit that combines education, resource sharing, land access, and food production models to support new and beginning farmers, jumpstart local wholesale market channels, and help nurture the local farming community. Eric's interests include care for creation, stargazing, farming, backpacking, canoeing, raising good kids, ancient wisdom, transformational experiences, creative ways to get kids outside and engaged in family chores, and being a good. Quite the bio. Eric, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Sean. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I want to start, of course, we just stated to the listeners that you are the director at Bethlehem Farm. And the reason that I wanted to bring you on is, one, because I love the work of Bethlehem Farm and would love to really promote it in any way that I can. But two, because my wife, Catherine, and I have a personal connection to Bethlehem Farm. So Catherine and I, back in 2017, both applied to work at Bethlehem Farm, myself as a project coordinator. And I don't recall the position that Catherine applied for, but we wound up in 2017 going up to spend a week with Bethlehem Farm and live with the community, work with the community, pray with the community, and so forth. And I know that for myself, and I can say for Catherine as well, we have both always really held Bethlehem Farm dear to our heart. And we have since visited once, and as we were talking about offline, have wanted to visit other times, but it hasn't worked out. But in any case, like I said, we have this personal connection that was really profoundly impactful to us and our lives. And so, like I said, that's a lot of the impetus behind wanting to have you on the show. So I'd like to start, Eric, with just a really pointed question for the listeners. And that is, if you could kind of just give me a brief, it's an odd word for the work that you do, but elevator pitch for what is Bethlehem Farm?
Sure. Yeah. So Bethlehem Farm is a Catholic community situated in Appalachia, southeastern West Virginia. And as part of our mission, we transform lives through service with the local community and teaching sustainable practices. And we invite volunteers to join us in living the gospel cornerstones of prayer, community, simplicity, and service. So our main thing is we're a Catholic community, Catholic Christian community, and living that out in our particular place. And so that could mean our low-income home repair program, where we work with families who cannot afford a contractor to make sure they're safe, warm, dry, and healthy. That's a big part of our local service. It could mean hosting service retreat weeks, which are kind of like a Cursillo, kind of a short course in the Catholic life. And so we host primarily high school and college students for 15, 16, 17 weeks out of the year. 300 or 400 people a year come through, and they will help in the low-income home repair program. They'll also serve in the organic gardens and learn about sustainable practices around the farm. So care for creation is a big part of that. And we've had a partnership for, I guess, since 2018 with the Wheaton Franciscan Sisters with our Green Neighbors program. So with that, we help families get more sustainable materials for their home repair projects, less toxic, more durable, insulating, weatherization type of things. We have a weatherization program where we're putting in insulated windows, things like that. And we have a renewable energy program where we can help lower income families achieve solar panels and energy resilience in that way. So that's kind of some of the ways that mission flashes out.
Awesome. Thank you. No, that's a great introduction. So, one thing that I wanted to note is the first thing that struck me and Catherine when we visited Bethlehem Farm was the welcome home greeting, and I noticed you've got that kind of theme on your website, and the way that it worked then, and I'm sure COVID threw a little bit of a wrench in this, but was we got there, everyone said welcome home, and we got hugs from everyone, and it was this warm, welcoming greeting. And I was thinking about it in preparation for this interview, and I thought there are really there's a lot packed into those two words, welcome and home, that I think exemplify what Bethlehem Farm is. So tell me a bit, if you could, about the significance of that greeting and how it speaks to what Bethlehem Farm community is.
Sure. Yeah. On the face of it, we deeply believe that Christ is present in each person. And so when somebody arrives, we think, well, how would we respond if Jesus Christ was walking onto this property? And for us, that's with a big hug. It could be different for different people.
Sure.
There's a lot of ways to welcome. And also letting people know that it is when you are at home, it is a safe space. You can be yourself. Hopefully, ideally, there's not a lot of judgment, and that is, we're created in the image and likeness of God. So it's like being home inside that body that is a sanctuary of the Holy Spirit, and having that reflected back to you, that's how you're seen, is as a child of God, as a reflection of the being created. And then that weaves through the week. We try to weave that through with the home repair program, that we're not working for people, but we're working with people. So it's not a transactional relationship, it's a transformational relationship with the families that we're working with. And that weaves into our community suppers during the week, where anybody is welcome to come up and share a meal for us, with the group. And then when we close the week, we always close with a foot washing. And I
Hmm.
hadn't thought about some of the depths of the meaning there until a group came back and said, our pastor was giving a homily on Holy Thursday, and he was talking about how foot washing for the Jewish people, it was welcome home. It was a deep welcome home. It's like, you're coming into my household, and I'm welcoming
Hmm.
you, and also we're going to be together safely. Some of the ideas that we did learn during COVID, that the indoors is one of the least safe places. So you want to be clean and healthy, and how you are there together. But anyway, he said that in the context of the Last Supper, that's just amplified so much more, because it's not just the welcome home of, here, you're coming into my house, let me take care of you, and you've probably been on your feet for a long time, especially in Jesus' time, as you approach a household. But also Jesus in that meal is sharing the Eucharist, which is like our great welcome home, like welcome home to the kingdom of heaven.
Mhm.
That's when we fully live Eucharist, we are enjoying a taste of heaven. And so I think that that welcome home weaves itself through our work, and it can tie into each part of it because creation care, well, so this planet is our home, and it is a place where we learn a lot about our creator through all of the created things. And some people are feeling less and less at home as they get pushed away from their ancestral places, as places get too hot or too whatever, too wet or not cold enough or whatever where they are, and they don't feel at home as much anymore in a really deep sense. And so how can we acknowledge that and then try to engender a place where people can stay in their homes, whether it's putting in a grab bar in their bathroom so they can get in and out of the tub and stay in their house,
Mm.
or whether it's living in such a way that we're not forcing migration and things due to climate chaos and things like that. So I think it ties into a lot of what we're doing of helping people feel at home and on all sorts of levels.
Yeah, I really like a couple things you said there. First, I mean there's a lot there, but first, saying, you see Jesus Christ in each person, and so the way that it can work differently for other people, but the way that you choose to greet is, with welcome home and a hug. And in some ways, it reminds me of, and I couldn't tell you where in the Bible, but St. Paul says, "Greet one another with a holy kiss." Right? There's just this joy that it, in some ways has to be expressed in some form of physical affection, recognizing the image of God in another person. And and like I said, I always found it beautiful that that's the way that Bethlehem Farm welcomed us. And by the way, I should know, I don't want to forget to say it towards before the end. When you leave Bethlehem Farm, it says, "Go in peace to love and serve the Lord," as you're driving out, which I also find beautiful. So, I also like that you said, so let me back up for a second. This channel is largely about listening to perspectives that are sometimes dismissed within the Catholic Church, but that I think that there is often a broader um, uh, range of, let's say, tenable Catholic positions that can be held. And you mentioned some things there. For example, just using the word safe space. Some people may just reject that as some form or another of woke terminology, whatever might be the case. But you grounded in the fact that human persons should feel safe and at home in the presence of a Christian who sees Christ in them, right? And I really love the depth of perspective that you can give to something that can otherwise be just this dismissed as uh, well, like I just said, right? So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that there's a lot, like I said, packed into that statement, and you unpacked it really well. Um, so you mentioned when you gave your elevator pitch that you mentioned the gospel cornerstones that are kind of the driving force and behind what the folks at Bethlehem Farm do. So I know that you strive to live by those, and they include, as you said, service, prayer, simplicity, and community. So I'd kind of like to ask about each one in turn. We can start with service. And obviously, you mentioned some of it, but tell me a little bit about how it is that service is lived out in the Bethlehem Farm community. And specific examples, if you're allowed and able to share them, would be great, but whatever you wish.
Sure. Yeah. So I think we think about service from a very personal level of taking care of each other. Times when I can take care of the dishes, so you because you've had a rough day, simple service like that, and which really was what the foot washing was. It was a very simple household service. This wasn't um, the scouts going out for a community service project, which is a good thing. But anyway, I think in the household, beginning with basic service, whether it's preparing a meal, welcoming somebody, whatever it is. And then in the community, we have our low-income home repair program. So we're building wheelchair ramps with people who are homebound. It might be that the ambulance has to come to get them to an appointment because they can't get in and out of their own home. It might be um, that their roof is leaking, and so now the house is getting moldy. And it might be that the windows are drafty, and so it's hard to keep the house warm enough to be healthy. And so there's a lot of just basic repairs. There's a high rate of home ownership in our area, but once people are retired, there's often not, or they get disabled because the nature of the work in West Virginia is that many people are disabled from the work. And so whatever it is, whether they're retired or disabled, then they're on a fixed income. So now they can't afford to take care of the roof the way they used to hire somebody. And so we have that. I mentioned our Green Neighbors solar program. So that's been a
Mhm.
really neat opportunity to help people to be able to lower their electric bill, lock in an electric bill, and also do so in a way that utilizes abundantly available solar energy. Um, we work with other local nonprofits around our area, so that can be in low-income home repair projects. It can be helping out with, um, say, clothing or food distribution if that's what they need help with. And we'll work with some local farmers as well. We take care of our neighbors and we take care of our farmers. So it could be spring or fall planting. It could be a elderly neighbor that can't pull up the garden anymore or lift heavy objects. And so we have a lot of young people, and there aren't a whole lot of young people in this area, relatively speaking. So that's what some of the service looks like. You want me to go into the next cornerstone, or do you want to clarify anything?
No, I think that's good. I just say one thing that I wanted to share as you were saying that is I do remember being involved in some of the home repair in my interview and getting the opportunity to see what that was like. And I think uh, one thing that I just want to point out that I learned is I think that you do extremely important work because I noticed uh, in West Virginia, at least in the case of the home that we went to, and I think helped to build an entire addition to, um, the poverty was so hidden. It was so remote, as if to easily be unnoticed by people, right? These are some mountain people who are off in the woods in remote areas of West Virginia. And I think it is so vital to have a community like yours in the surrounding area to provide service in that respect. So, but no, I think that's great. I appreciate you sharing kind of the full scope of what it is that you do. So, yeah, let's go on to the next. We had service. Jump into prayer.
Sure. So we begin and end each day with prayer. When we host a group, we're leading the group through thinking through the cornerstones. You know, what does how do we find them in the Gospels? How do we live them in our lives? How will they guide us for the week? And then we walk through different aspects of Catholic social teaching, um,
Hmm.
care for the poor and vulnerable, um, the dignity of work, peace and disarmament, just different basic concepts that can lead us through the week. The dignity of the human person, which of course underpins the entirety of Catholic social teaching, and as we get through the week, also exploring care for creation as well. And then when we transition towards the end of the time the group is with us, the group is actually given the opportunity to plan some prayers. And as a Catholic who's used to going to Mass, and we're given a good amount, pretty much everything that we're to say, the priest has a little bit of a leeway with the homily. Someone might say, "What do you mean plan a prayer?" Well, of course, the Holy Spirit is always making things new, and there's a lot of different ways to pray. Somebody gave us the um, the Rosary, and that was a
Right.
creative prayer, which actually some people rejected at first as a
Mm,
creative prayer. And of course, some people started kneeling during Mass, and then we kind of, as Catholics, we get to accumulate over thousands of years some of these awesome practices that have been inspired by the Holy Spirit. So we ask people, where are you? Whether it's Lectio Divina, or whether it's spending time in nature, or whether it's reflecting on a question together, to lead the community in prayer. And that can be a real time of helping to make someone's faith their own, which it may be their parents' faith when they're a high schooler, and they need to make it their
right.
own at some point. And so then we try to also, St. Paul says we should pray without ceasing. And so just keeping in mind that the cornerstones inform each other,
Mm,
and praying throughout the day. Of course, gathering for grace before meals, praying when we start a work site, when we conclude a work site, but also just making it that our work itself can be lifted up as a prayer, and so directing it as such, and then discerning what work we should be doing. Certain work maybe it would be hard to think of as a prayer, so then thinking about how we could do that. But even, I do a lot of administration. Well, what's a root of that word? It's ministry. And
mm,
so there are a lot of ministries that may be a little harder to see, how they're serving, but gosh, if someone wasn't doing them, where would we be? So
mm.
that's a lot of the shapes that prayer takes. And then when we are by ourselves on ordinary weeks, the prayer will take a little different shapes, according to it being a smaller group. We always have Mass when the group comes on the first full day. And we do have a Eucharistic chapel, so there's opportunity for people to
Mm,
participate in adoration sometimes. And so I would say that we like to, I guess, drawing on what you said about, we live in a big church. And to me, it would be easy on the one hand to say, okay, we're just going to do whatever the tradition is, which, like I said, there's traditions that weren't traditional until they were. And then it would also be easy to say, oh, we're only going to do new things because I have a bad taste from tradition. And so we try to be open to, this is a beautiful old church, so much wisdom to build upon. Augustine, Ignatius, you can list names on and on of people who've been teachers. We could even call some of them doctors of the church. And then also the Holy Spirit created me as a new creation. And so why am I here? What do I have to offer? And how can I bring that into prayer? And so having the traditional and the creative as part of our prayer, I think, is important.
Yeah, well, you said a couple of things there. One, it reminds me of the phrase. I think it's from Augustine. Uh, Beauty ever ancient, ever new, something to that
Yeah.
effect, right? So I think that phrase bears on what you just said. Um, I also liked, and this may have been more connected to the service cornerstone, but as you said, they're all tied together. That you made this point, which I think I felt to be so true at Bethlehem Farm, which is, there's no, let's say, assigned job that's useless, even if it seems menial or unimportant, right? I really felt the sense that the biblical idea of all the members of the body are necessary, and the hand can't say to the foot, or the eye can't say to the foot, I have no need of you, was really borne out at Bethlehem Farm. And the community can really be kind of encapsulated by that idea. um, and another point, just as you said, I was thinking the same thing, which you just pointed out, Eric, which is uh, there is such an interrelation between the cornerstones, because you say, the washing of the feet, and my mind goes to prayer, but your mind goes to service, and it's really both, right? It's prayer and service at once. So, well, awesome. So that's so we have service and we have prayer, and then next would be simplicity. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah. So when I look for a grounding in Scripture, a lot of times I look at Matthew, chapter 10, verses 1 through 16. It's the calling of the 72, the sending out of the 72, and Jesus tells them how to do that. And there's a striking passage there where he says, "Take nothing for the journey."
Mhm.
And it's like, wow, so what is that about? And if you read Luke, you know, maybe you take a staff and sandals, but not a second tunic. So there's different versions, and they have their different emphases, because while the staff and the sandals will help you go farther in your ministry, but the second tunic's only going to hold you back. And so thinking about how does that apply to what we're doing here, when Catholics aren't fundamentalists, but we do believe that this scripture is teaching us fundamental truths about who we are.
Mhm.
And in our time, it's pretty clear to everybody that we have a simplicity problem, meaning not enough of it. And then I think it's about discernment to figure out, okay, how do we, in my situation, how do I approach that? Or our situation as a parish, our situation as a family, as a nation, whatever. And so when people come for a group week, we invite people to set aside their smartphones, and we are a few people on a small well, so we invite people to limit their showering, 2 showers on the week, and just be mindful of water use. And of course, for almost all of us, water use is also electricity use, and so we become mindful of how our electricity, by and large, is produced, and so then therefore what we can do to reduce it, and we might touch on that a little later. And um, so we think about simplicity in kind of these materialistic ways,
Mhm.
that if you look at um, we all have our things to improve, but the billionaires among us are consuming the equivalent. If everybody on Earth consumed the way that they consumed, we would consume 84 Earths a year.
Mhm.
Okay, and of course, as an average American, we're only consuming what, like twice what the Earth can produce in a year or something. And then of course, there's people who are living much simpler in a way that all of us could live. And we want to figure out a way, and we know that with with the Holy Spirit on our side that we can, that we can all live safe, warm, healthy, fruitful existences with what we need, and then of course not giving in to all the temptations to just consume more than what is given. And there is so much that is given. And so that's kind of the underpinnings of simplicity. And I think there's also spiritual aspects, because, gosh, where does my spiritual reading go when I'm browsing the internet for an hour in the evening out the window? Or where does my sleep go? Or, whatever it is. And so simplicity makes a lot of room for prayer and God, because some of consumption now, like consumption for its own sake, or like materialistic consumption, is basically one of the underpinnings is just a lack of faith. I'm not going to be taken care of. I
Mhm.
need to have more and more and more and more to feel like I am going to be taken care of. And so that is part of the human condition. But of course, Jesus has that passage about, what about the flowers of the field and then the birds? What kind of toils are they doing, and how well taken care of they are, and how do you, and of course balancing that with proper planning and so forth that you need to do as a parent and all that. But anyway, simplicity, I think, is really important right now, and so we're thinking about it both materially, just from a basic resource level, but also how's that affecting our relationships, especially with God.
Yeah, it's funny because you went to the passage that, if I'm not mistaken, I came to mind when you were talking about this kind of rabid consumption, um, or excessive consumption is ultimately an underlying lack of faith, because it says, I don't know if I'm going to be cared for. And my thought immediately went to what I believe is the ending of that passage, which is, seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be given you besides, right? And that's something to think about. It's funny because actually immediately as you said the thing about about the phone, my mind was going to, that's the reason why That is my Lenten sacrifice this year, is to put away the phone, right? Because I think that it sucks the spiritual energy out of you. Yeah, that's awesome. And it brought to mind a lot of the experiences that we have. I'm kind of remembering things as we discuss this, of our experience at Bethlehem Farm. Um, but okay, so we I think we can move on to the final cornerstone, and which would be community. And I don't know if you have any particular order. You had placed prayer first. I'm sure that's probably how you would like for it to be said. But anyways, let's hear what you have to say about community.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And they all rely on each other. And, community, there's no mistake that we believe in a holy trinity. So even our God is a community. Um, I've been told that anytime you see the word you in the Old Testament, it's actually literally translated y'all. Okay. That
Mm,
it's not that, like, the Jewish people, there's just not a concept at that time in Judaism of the individual by themselves, because that's death
mm,
in the desert. You can't, any tribal society, you would just, to be exiled was to sentence somebody to death. And so we need each other. And now we have a lot of ways set up so that there's a facade that we don't need each other. And cheap petroleum and different things help make that possible for a brief period of time, and they have other effects. But one of the effects they have is trying to, like, this individualism that, I mean, John Paul II saw that as especially in the Western Church, as an issue, and it continues to come up because what is one of the hallmarks of Pope Francis's papacy? Encounter, the culture of encounter. And so it's acknowledging that relationship, and maybe especially with people that we wouldn't normally associate with. So community for us, it begins with that there is a caretaker community at Bethlehem Farm of those of us who commit to voluntary simplicity. So we don't accept a salary, we are taken care of, um, and we give our lives to one another. Um, and then there's so much excess from that giving. That's how we direct our work into service. Of course, the simplicity helps with that, and prayer directs that. And so we come together under a common mission, which I shared with you, and a vision of where we're headed. And I think that from the board to the caretaker community, because we are set up as a nonprofit, the unity that we have through our faith, and through our dedication to the mission, is probably our greatest strength. Um, and so throughout the week, on a group week, the ways that you would see that flesh out is we're having prayer together in a group. You can certainly take time for personal prayer. We're having our meals together in a group, and we break, say there's 4 schools that come. Well, we're going to mix those schools up into work crews where you're working with different people, maybe from different walks of life than you've met before, or from your rival high school or whatever. And um, so you start to take down walls that you thought were pretty sturdy, between yourself and other people. And of course, not having, as you said, the supercomputer in your pocket. Uh, it's like 4 days later, and people feel like they're deeper friends than anybody that they know from back home, or a lot of people that they know. And they're like, "Oh, why did this happen?" I was like, "Well, we were praying together. We set aside our device, like, we were intentional about it." So the key
mm.
word about it is intentional Christian community. And so, yeah, it weaves its way through our entire life, and we're always talking about, there's balances with it, because during our ordinary time, this person wants to do this activity, learn line dancing, and that person wants to go over here, and okay, well, when are we going to have our common time together, whether it's meals or a shared prayer. So there's a balance of not being insular,
Mhm.
um, but then also having a communal life, a life together.
Yeah, absolutely. That that makes sense. I do remember, even when I was there, you mentioning kind of that that challenge of you know, multiple individuals want to do things that are beneficial to them individually, but you have to have a balance with the community life. And yeah, I imagine that's a hard balance to strike, especially with how intentionally you all live the life that you do. But you seem to do it well. I'd say, yeah, I had much the same experience when I was there of feeling, especially close to the folks that were there. And I actually never thought to think, yeah, I mean, we're praying together. Of course, I felt close because of the environment it- that is there at Bethlehem Farm is so conducive to friendship and goodwill towards others and help. And those are the types of things that build a sense of closeness. I'd also say, I was talking to a friend last night, telling him I was going to do this interview with you, and I told him, no, I should preface this by saying, when I went there for the interview, we worked really hard, right? There was a lot that we did. We were up early, but I told my friend it was like I don't think I've had a vacation like that in forever. Like I came back feeling so refreshed and so at peace and at ease. And I think it was especially the experience of being immersed in nature and having quiet and solitude. So there's that as well. There's the community that benefits folks, but also the ability for true and genuine and fruitful solitude. Um, well, thank you. Yeah, that wraps up our discussion about the cornerstones. I don't want to keep you too much longer. Maybe one or two more questions. One question that I really want to ask you is in relation to uh, the environment and the impact of being, ecologically or environmentally irresponsible. Um, if I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong. By the way, for the listeners, one thing I was so impressed by, Eric, when I talked with you is just your depth of knowledge about environmental science and so forth. But if I recall, you explained to us how there's this phenomenon called mountaintop removal, where basically I mean, the trees on the tops of mountains and various parts of the land are just demolished and taken down, and the mountaintops become bare. And I don't know for what purpose, I'd imagine for lumber or otherwise, but regardless, there's this kind of dominating attitude where these mountaintops are just destroyed. And if I recall, you had said that what this does, uh, among other things, is it removes the natural barriers to water flow. And as a result of removing the natural barriers to water flow, um, you have rising water levels, say in the rivers, and people in West Virginia actually experience floods that then destroy their homes. And it's your contention, it sounds perfectly reasonable to me that this mountaintop removal at least contributed to that. Um, and it reminded me of, I don't know if I had read Laudato Si by the time I went to Bethlehem Farm or read it after, but it was either I had the kind of realization there or when I read it after that, wow, Pope Francis is spot on that it is the world's poor who are most affected by environmental irresponsibility. So I'd just kind of like to get your thoughts about that.
Sure. Yeah, and that the mountaintop removal is a coal mining practice. So
Okay.
yeah, the one of the I guess perversions of it is by and large the trees are just lit on fire, so they're all taken away, but they're not even used. But yeah, so and I think that one of the things that's talked about in liberation theology is crucified peoples, and there's a Appalachian pastoral letter called The Telling Takes Us Home," which talks about also crucified places. And so you think about how come it's okay in West Virginia? Can you imagine that happening in Vermont? A mountain getting taken down 500 to 1,000 feet with blasting I mean, the amount of blasting across West Virginia over the course of a year, at least as of the last year I saw figures for, was 2014. An atomic bomb's worth of explosives used over the course of a year in West Virginia, on this place. And just the amount of violence when you think about what's happening across the world. And we're thinking about um, we're thinking about Afghanistan, we're thinking about Gaza, we're thinking about various places where bombs are falling on a daily basis, and the terror of that. And then you think about, oh, well, that's, it's different, but it's happening here, and it's like all legal. And that's happening. West Virginians are not very politically powerful. We see that in the Gulf Coast. Who lives next to the chemical plants? Who lives next to the refineries? It's the poor and it's the vulnerable. And those are going to be the same, pretty similar places that are sinking as sea levels are rising. And so, what's either the socioeconomic status or the color of someone's skin who is having to leave a place because of waters rising. It's pretty easy to guess at that. And so I think, yeah, Pope Francis is right. And so he's right that we can't address either of those issues as separate. He calls that integral ecology. He says to just focus on care for creation, it just doesn't make sense, because first of all, we are creation. We're a part of creation. We're a creature, we got one who is created. And so to think about, care for the poor and care for creation, those go together. And in these cases that you're talking about, it's one and the same thing. Because it's, where are we talking about stockpiling nuclear waste? You better believe it's probably going to be an Indian reservation. It's just like on and on and on. And if you look at the U.S. history in Latin America, a lot of it's about how can we extract, and then who can we put in power that will be okay with us extracting. And that's not the whole story. I mean, the United States is as a nation in the world, it has some really awesome things about it, and it has some really challenging things about it. But yeah, I think you're right, and Pope Francis is right that there is that tying together between the plight of the poor and the plight of earth. And Jesus said, whatever you do to these least brothers and sisters of mine, you do it to me. So he says that's, and actually in that passage, in the final judgment, it's unique. It's only in Matthew. It hinges Matthew's gospel, because everything before is Jesus's public ministry. Everything after is Jerusalem, which means the passion and death and resurrection. And I can't find another place where at the end of the passage, it's Jesus telling the story, but it's the king who says, this is the path to heaven, and this is the path to eternal hellfire. And it goes through how you respond to the least brothers and sisters of mine. And it's a challenge. That particular reading is a challenge to us, because it's not that you have to do bad things to experience a taste of hell, or in that case, eternal hellfire. He says, it's those of us that did nothing. Because he says, you who, you fed you gave me food, you gave me drink, you gave me clothing, come enter the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. And he says, you didn't do this. So that's a real stark call to us. Luckily for us, we have prayer, and we have, hopefully we have a merciful and loving God. But if we are faithful and want to do what we're called to do, it's at least our calling is clear, that it is the poor and vulnerable who need to be at the top of our mind as Christians.
It's funny. I think a theme of this this podcast. I do want to ask one more kind of silly question, if you have just another minute.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But I will say, I think the theme of this podcast is becoming to kind of end with a warning. That's what happened with Dr. Larry Chat, but I like that. I think that um, again, like you said, well, God is merciful, and it will be His dealing with all souls. But nonetheless, the warning stands, right? That no one will escape judgment for having not done to the least of them what He is calling them to do, or for having done injustice to them. So, and myself included. And by the way, as you say it, I'm fear and trembling is coming over me. So I'm not by any means saying that I'm one who does well at that. But anyways, so maybe to lighten the mood a little bit, we can move on to, as I said, this kind of silly question. So obviously, as I said, when Catherine and I came to Bethlehem Farm, we went away changed. Uh, we started a lot of practices. Actually, you might find this funny. Bethlehem Farm might be responsible for a number of chicken deaths because I did not do too well at maintaining chickens. But in any case, we also took home the practice of, I don't know if this is what you all called it, but like Friday night lights out. So basically, no phone, no television, all lights out. We would use candlelight to navigate the home. We would sit and talk, or just even sometimes read a book by candlelight. And we have since stopped that practice, and I have often suggested that we should start it again. And Catherine, she does find it to be a valuable practice, but doesn't feel like right now is the time to restart that. So tell me, Eric, what do I need to do to convince Catherine to start that practice again?
So I'll preface by saying we've always had consensus around this practice, so I don't
Right.
have a lot of experience persuading a particular individual. However, I do, as you mentioned, share each for us Thursday evening. Although when groups aren't here lately, it's been Wednesday evening. We call it our electricity fast, and that can be a good frame for it because I think one of the things I mention is I tell the story about mountaintop removal coal mining. You could tell a story about hydraulic fracturing. I mean, however you're getting electricity from a grid these days, more and more, there's more renewables coming on, but there's a lot of terrible things that would be hard to explain to our children that we are doing them. And part of it's that we're just removed from it. And so when we know about these things, whether it's hydraulic fracturing, whether it's the different pipelines that are coming through, and which is particular to our neighborhood, or whether it's something like mountaintop removal coal mining, and we think, okay, well, what is going on? See what's going on. Judge, are we okay with this? If we aren't okay with it, is there what? How can we be a part of a movement, or at least make space for something different than whatever's happening? And that's what I see the electricity fast as, is creating space.
Hmm.
And fasting in general, it I think it does three things. Probably maybe there's more that it does, but and there's different reasons why we engage in it. You know, sometimes we fast for clarity, and I think food fasting is really good for that, but certainly technology fasting is too. And I think the electricity fast serves that purpose. Sometimes we fast as an atonement. So we are participating in a social sin in the way that most of us garner our electricity. We're not the person setting off the explosives, or emitting the methane off the natural gas, or sending millions of gallons of water to frack a well with toxic chemicals laced in it and polluting people's groundwater. But we are participating, and so I think that that reason factors in. And then sometimes we fast out of an act of solidarity, however incomplete. You know, you fast from food, it's you're making that choice, so immediately it's not the same as someone who's food insecure. But you can enter in a little bit and offer up some of that for people who don't have that choice. And so I think that the electricity fast really can be spurred on by any of those three reasons. And it can create a space where we can clear our minds and our physical space in a way to think about how things could be different, to be creative in our thought. And um, so I think that it has value for that reason. What would I say in your particular situation? There's a lot of different ways to do it. So like I get the with the age that your kids are, it could be
Right.
like this is not working. Yeah, whatever it is. So
Right.
and
Right.
I
Right.
could say just because, for instance, in my family, by the time we're done with our covenant, what we call our covenant time with our community on Wednesday evening, the kids are mostly in bed, so they aren't necessarily actively participating most of the time. And so maybe I should think about, like when is that going to change, and
Right.
what does that mean? But it's just been the pattern. It's not necessarily on purpose. It's just the way that the evening goes. So the dishes are already done, and then but it's how are we going to settle into this evening together? And we have said, hey, and I don't care if your technology is running on a battery. Let's set aside the technology too. We've agreed on that, and so that's a nice space. And I'm thinking my pitch is when will be a good time to institute some space in the family when we're not on our devices and can be together, and probably before the children are rejecting everything you say. You have certain patterns. Like
Right.
we have our evening prayer time as a family. Now with extracurriculars that we miss it all the time, but the kids know when we're all together and it's the evening, it we're gonna have prayer. And that might be a lot harder to institute when they were 13, 16, 19, so that might be something to consider is how do we want to create a different space in our family where we're not just like eventually staring at the individual screens. Um, and of course, there's other things that could help with that. But that was one thing that came to my mind. So uh, and I think that to me, the spirit of this podcast, I was really struck by your first episode and just the whole apostle of the ear. And so maybe it's not exactly the electricity fast, but what is
Hmm.
what is it together that we're going to do, and how are we going to make that space? And I think that it does connect us. So we are disconnected. A lot of us are alienated from good and productive work. A lot of us are alienated from, like I said, our home places. We are becoming we may be alienated from our Lord, and the I found the electricity fast connects us at least to our ancestors
Mm.
who like you don't have to go back 5 generations in any of our families, and this is what people did every night. And so there's just that, like, it's in our DNA, there's that connection. And I think it connects us to our just the human condition of people who gather around firelight, lamplight, candlelight, whatever. So there can be a grounding aspect to it. But yeah, it is in friction with jobs are bleeding into the evening so much,
Right.
and we got to be available all the time, and so but that makes it that much more important. So just how are we going to do that together? But I don't know. You certainly can't. It's one of those invitations, and can we accept it together? Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I don't want to, of course, don't want to give Catherine too hard of a time. There are things that are reasonable in each situation, and I do think everything you said there is valid. But I think the most valid thing you said there is on my part. What can I uh, listen to her perspective on, and then from there develop a good practice that suits us both, and it's maybe a small step in the right direction to fostering these practices that do, as you said, even in some ways, atone for our social sins, that foster good and healthy relationship, a sense of connectedness to ancestors, and so forth. So, well, we've had a really full episode. Once again, as I said on the first one, that went in ways that I wouldn't have expected, but really, really good ones. Um, so, Eric, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here. I'll announce it this time. I accidentally stopped it on my last episode, but I appreciate your time, and thank you everyone for listening and watching.
Yeah, thanks, Sean.